In today's special, I'll reveal the secrets behind the Regurgitator's most famous and impossible tricks ever performed on the internet. As a bonus, I'll also uncover the mystery of the Human Pincushion.
You're watching Rayman 7.
Stevie Starr, the famous professional regurgitator. Stevie Starr is probably one of the most famous regurgitators of our time. He doesn't claim to be a magician and doesn't need to. His entire act revolves around what he says is a natural ability to regurgitate objects on command. From coins to goldfish to full-sized billiard balls. Starting with the most impossible feats, he swallows 5 coins, each marked by a spectator, and regurgitates them one by one in the exact order requested. He's able to swallow a borrowed ring, a lock, and a key, then bring all 3 back up with the ring securely locked onto the lock. He drinks a glass of water after swallowing a full bowl of dry sugar, yet somehow regurgitates the sugar completely dry.
Wonderful.
On another occasion, he swallows a live goldfish and returns it unharmed. Then come the dangerous feats, swallowing a full-size billiard ball or even a light bulb, and producing them again with no visible damage. In another performance, he inhales butane gas and even allows a volunteer to hold a lighter to his mouth to prove the gas isn't being stored secretly somehow in his mouth. He then swishes soap in his mouth to form a bubble, fills it with the gas, and sets it on fire. Alright, let's start with Stevie's most impossible trick, the borrowed ring unlock illusion. If we were to take every part of his performance literally, we're supposed to believe that somewhere along the way, the key found the keyhole, turned itself perfectly, and popped it open, all while submerged in the acidic, pitch-black interior of his upper GI tract. Once something enters your esophagus, that's the muscular tube running from your throat to your stomach, it travels in one direction only, down. This is done through a process called peristalsis, which is a wave-like muscle contraction that pushes food or objects toward the stomach. So of course this is straight-up nonsense, which is why you can see in his performance that right after he borrows Alicia's ring, you can see him turn around and secretly lock her ring onto a lock he is holding in his hand while walking back up on stage. He then holds the lock and key like this in his hand such that only the ring is visible. He loads the lock into his mouth first while displaying the ring, and right when he opens his mouth to swallow it, we catch a glimpse of the lock and the ring already linked together before he apparently swallows it. Now let's look at another odd feat, the sugar and water separation trick. Stevie swallows a wine glass of sugar, then water, and later brings the sugar back up separately, as if his stomach has a built-in filing system, one side marked dry, the other wet. So if Stevie is regurgitating dry sugar after drinking water, either he's storing the sugar somewhere else entirely, or he's not swallowing it at all. Well, the secret behind this trick is in fact a quick load, which he was caught doing on one occasion, where once he completed one trick while everyone focused on the host's reaction. You'll notice Stevie immediately reached into his coat, stuffed something into his mouth, and then swallowed sugar from the wine glass. So what exactly is that load? And that's basically a ball of sugar that stays in solid state, as in, the outer ball of sugar acts as a shell to protect the inner dry sugar powder. This kind of structure is commonly created using a method borrowed from modern culinary techniques, where sugar or isomalt is heated and blown into a thin, hollow shell, just like glass. Inside that shell, dry sugar can be stored. When the shell is crushed inside the mouth, the dry contents spill out instantly. Then there is this particular claim he constantly makes.
And the beauty is, it's hot, but it's absolutely bone dry. Nothing will come up wet, ever. Nothing will ever be wet.
If he truly swallows something and then regurgitates it, it should be wet. There's no anatomical loophole here. The entire upper digestive tract is designed to keep things moist for safe travel downward. Now let's move on to the goldfish swallowing trick. In this act, Stevie Starr swallows a live goldfish with water, talks for a bit, and then regurgitates the goldfish alive and wriggling back into a glass. Of course, this isn't unique to Stevie. David Blaine has done it too, with frogs. And going back even further, early 20th century sideshow performers were already mastering similar feats. It's only fair we give credit where credit is due, to someone who actually earned the title of Human Regurgitator. That man was Haji Ali. And unlike the illusionists we see today, his method was the act. Haji Ali was known for doing things that seemed medically impossible, but were actually real. A famous film performance from the 1930s shows him first swallowing large quantities of water, then kerosene oil. With a small flame already lit in a fire pit in front of him, he regurgitates the kerosene oil first, projecting it like a human flamethrower. He does this multiple times on command. Then, without missing a beat, he regurgitates the water he swallowed earlier and uses it to completely extinguish the flames. And yes, it was real. His body was trained to hold and release specific substances with astonishing control. But there's also a bit of science behind the sequencing. Kerosene oil is less dense than water and doesn't mix with it. The two form separate layers when together. That meant when he began to regurgitate, the kerosene oil naturally came up first, followed by the water. Exactly the order he needed to create, and then put out the fire. As for David Blaine, the man credited with teaching him the frog regurgitation trick is a lesser-known sideshow performer named Ian Brown, aka El Lurchio. Ian taught him how to regurgitate frogs safely. He's one of the few people in the world capable of performing this feat. One question we might have in mind is, how does the stomach acid not kill the frog? Frogs are actually sensitive to changes in pH. The normal pH of the human stomach is very acidic, around 1.5 to 3.5, which would typically damage the frog's skin and lead to its death fairly quickly. To counter this, David Blaine drinks large amounts of water beforehand, diluting the acid and raising the pH. But even if the frog survives, how is David immune to its toxins? Many frog species produce harmful chemicals as a defense mechanism, and some even carry salmonella. This experience forced him to become more cautious, selecting frogs that were both non-toxic and less likely to carry harmful bacteria. Ian taught Blaine how to swallow the frogs by drinking a large amount of water mixed with bicarbonate, which creates a neutral environment in his stomach. However, he's now largely vanished from the internet, following multiple controversies and a general disdain for exposure or criticism. His YouTube channel, which once contained videos of regurgitation demonstrations, has since been wiped clean. Now, while what Stevie does with regurgitating fish is within the realm of possibility, there's a major problem with this particular fish regurgitating act he performed with Penn Teller, which I will get to in a moment. Let's move on to another act, where Stevie inhales a lungful of cigarette smoke, then gently exhales it into a floating soap bubble. He literally speaks before exhaling the smoke into the bubble, but if the smoke had actually been in his lungs, it would have escaped the moment he spoke. The same issue comes up when he inhales butane gas, then breathes it back out into a soap bubble and lights it on fire. First of all, breathing in even a moderate amount of butane can cause lightheadedness, nausea, or even sudden cardiac arrest in extreme cases. Well, he accidentally gave away the secret when the judges asked him a question mid-performance.
Where's the smoke?
In my tummy.
What he means when he says the smoke is in his stomach is that he's not inhaling it into his lungs, he's actually swallowing it. It's similar to how people can swallow air and then burp it back out. The proper term for that is aerophagia, but put simply, he's gulping the smoke or gas into his stomach, not his lungs. Once it's in his stomach, he uses his regurgitation control to bring it back up as a gas, like a burp, and pushes it into the soap bubble. So nothing goes in or out of his lungs. It's all happening between his stomach and mouth. Here you can see him burping the butane back out. Now, when he swallows the smoke and burps it, there's still some smoke left in his stomach, which explains why in the very last moment you can see him swallowing more air. That extra gulp of air helps push the remaining smoke out of his stomach, allowing it to exit his body completely. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. Swallowing a billiard ball or a bulb is an entirely different story. The esophagus is only about 10 inches long and approximately 2 centimeters wide, just enough for food to pass through. A regular billiard ball measures approximately 5.7 centimeters in diameter. Even a smaller variant like those used in magic props still measures around 4.4 centimeters, far beyond what the human esophagus can accommodate. The average adult esophagus has a resting diameter of only 2 to 3 centimeters. In fact, a ball measuring over 4 centimeters wouldn't even make it past the throat, let alone enter the esophagus. The upper pharynx and entrance to the esophagus would immediately engage the gag reflex, and physical obstruction would occur before the object ever entered the digestive tract. And even if, purely hypothetically, he had managed to force the ball down, there's one glaring visual problem. We never see a bulge or any indication that a large object is moving down his throat. An object over 4 centimeters wide should cause visible protrusion along the front of the neck. This is a clear giveaway that the ball never entered the esophagus at all. But we can't outright claim that just because the ball never went down his throat, it must have been hiding at the back of his mouth. After all, another magician, Mac Norton, known as the Great Waldo, also performed so-called regurgitation tricks. For example, he would swallow a lemon, take a puff of smoke, and then seemingly regurgitate the lemon back. Now, with all due respect, it's painfully obvious that he didn't swallow it in the first place to even call his act a regurgitation act. It's just lodged at the back of his mouth, which can be judged by his highly uncomfortable head position and the bulge right here. But in the case of Stevie, we don't actually see such a bulge, and it clearly shows that it's not lodged at the back of his mouth. He even opens his mouth. On the other hand, Mac Norton can't do that, as it would give away where the lemon actually is hiding. And to figure out where Stevie has stored it, we need to start by analyzing his face for clues. During several of his performances, subtle but telling facial irregularities can be observed. His upper lip appears asymmetrical, with an irregular curvature that deviates from standard anatomical structure. This is especially noticeable when he smiles or stretches his mouth during object production. The area between his upper lip and nose, the philtrum, looks flattened or underdeveloped, which is a common trait in individuals with midline facial anomaly. Additionally, his upper dental arch shows irregularities, such as spacing between the central incisors and slight misalignment of adjacent teeth. These features are often linked to problems in how the bones and muscles of the face and jaw develop, especially in people born with conditions like a cleft palate. These visible traits, along with the way he avoids speaking during certain parts of his act, especially when he seems to be storing a large object inside himself, suggest he may have an unrepaired or only partially repaired cleft palate, resulting in a condition known as velopharyngeal insufficiency. But there's one final clue that practically seals the case, and it's not theoretical. In multiple high-resolution videos, and clearly in these two close-up screenshots, you can see a subtle but unmistakable scar running vertically from the base of Stevie's nose down to the center of his upper lip. It's not a wrinkle or lighting artifact. The scar is consistently present and lines up perfectly with where cleft lip surgery is typically performed. Though faded with age, its presence strongly supports the idea that he was born with a cleft anomaly. When you combine this visible evidence with his facial asymmetry, dental irregularities, and the unusual amount of space he seems to have in his nasal cavity, the scar becomes the most undeniable physical confirmation of all. In simpler words, Stevie Starr is missing the barrier that normally separates the back of the mouth from the nose. This barrier is formed by the soft palate, which is supposed to rise and block off the nasal passage during swallowing and speech. The condition is often caused by a cleft palate, a birth defect where the roof of the mouth doesn't fully form, leaving a direct opening between the throat and the nasal cavity. Normally, this condition is treated early in life through surgery. In other cases, prosthetic implants or speech therapy can help reduce the effects. Despite the medical interest in his apparent abilities, Stevie has refused to donate his body to science, a decision that has only deepened curiosity about his physiology. Not only that, but when you consider even more clues I'm about to point out, this condition becomes the only explanation that truly makes sense. It's the one thing that could realistically make this ability possible. Notice how he behaves during the trick. After he apparently swallows the billiard ball, he suddenly stops talking. In most of his routines, Stevie keeps chatting as he performs.
And number 4.
But the moment the ball goes in, he goes silent. But when he performs with Penn Teller, he speaks for a moment, and that's when we notice something suspicious. I want you to listen to his voice before and after he swallows the camera film container.
I'd like to give you the container. Mamma mia.
Notice his voice audibly changed. It suddenly becomes more nasal, muffled, and slightly higher in pitch, almost like he's talking with his nose pinched shut. That's because if something is lodged in the nasal cavity, like a billiard ball, it blocks the airflow between the nose and mouth. Now, while we can't confirm anything without medical records about his cleft palate, but Stevie's background helps make sense of this, as he has mentioned this several times. Growing up in an orphanage, it's likely he didn't have access to proper medical care. If he was born with a cleft issue, chances are only the visible facial part was treated, while the internal defect, like a missing soft palate, was left untouched. He clearly has a lot of room in his nasal cavity, such that not only can he store a billiard ball and a light bulb, but even something as large as a multi-tool car key. You'll also notice how he places the car key such that the sharp end is facing down and the car key is facing up. So this is how it would look like if we could see right through him, how the car key is stored in his nasal cavity, after which he spits out the coin that is sitting outside the base of his gum. Now I'll address the trick he performed with Penn Teller. Stevie starts off by showing a small camera film container and tells the audience he's going to swallow the lid first. As he hands the empty container and a pen to Teller, he asks them to put a unique mark on it, something to prove it's the exact same container later. While Teller is marking it, Stevie swallows a live goldfish. Next, the container is filled with water. Stevie announces that he's going to swallow the marked container full of water, locate the fish inside him, somehow guide it into the container, and then also retrieve the lid still inside his body and seal it shut, all internally. After a moment, he does exactly that, and produces the now sealed container from his mouth. Then, when the lid is removed and the water is poured out, there's the fish. The secret behind this trick is, first of all, Penn Teller, who are performing alongside Stevie Starr, are in on the trick. Stevie isn't present on stage to fool them. In fact, all three are there to fool the audience.
Wow.
Right before he performs his act, Teller performed his famous Coins to Fish act, which, if you aren't a member on my channel already, what are you waiting for? I have already covered it, so be sure to join and become a channel member to get access to exclusive member-only reveals never before published on the internet. Now, the container that he apparently filled with water was just a false move. The container already contained water and had a fish inside it. This means the first fish he originally swallowed remains in his stomach and will be regurgitated after the show. The camera film container had a seal on top that prevented the fish and the water from spilling, which is also the reason why he never showed the container towards us to prove that it's empty. Apparently, we had to only trust Penn Teller's judgment. Now, the lid he swallowed earlier wasn't really swallowed. It was simply temporarily stored in his upper nasal cavity. After he repositioned it back into his mouth, he screwed it onto the camera container. At this moment, you can even see him twist the container slightly before shoving it back up into his nasal cavity. And that's when you notice the sudden change in his voice.
Mamma mia.
After which, he reproduces the camera container. While Teller removed the lid, the seal was also removed with it, allowing the water and the goldfish to pour out. Some of you might be wondering, what if he never regurgitates the goldfish either? What if it's also stored in his nasal cavity? But here's the problem. A live goldfish can't just be tucked behind the soft palate like a solid object. It's alive and it moves. You can't just wedge it into your nasal cavity and expect it to sit still. Furthermore, you can actually see him talking after swallowing the fish.
So,
Had he stored it in his nasal cavity, of course the sound wouldn't be affected, but the movement of the fish could risk it dropping straight into his mouth while he's talking. Of course, I can't wrap up Stevie Starr's analysis without explaining how he does the coin trick, where he swallows 4 coins one by one, each clearly numbered, and shows his mouth to be empty after every swallow. And then whichever numbered coin is called out by the audience, he regurgitates them back up one by one, showing his incredible control over his esophagus. At this point, we already know that our esophagus is not capable of doing any such precise motor-based skills. Furthermore, whenever he claims that a coin is swallowed, a clink sound is heard. You'll notice that instead of bringing the mic near his stomach, he brings the mic right up to his mouth, which is one clear giveaway that the coins never went past his throat. Secondly, on one occasion, he flashed the coins seated outside of his teeth on the base of his gum. And on another occasion, when the judges were laughing at his joke, he accidentally broke character and literally spat out all the coins he had stored in his mouth into his hand and then loaded them back into his mouth.
don't make me laugh.
Which once again is just the final blow to any sort of secrecy to his method. So basically, each of the coins that he's swallowing are actually just being stored around the base of his gum. And since he knows where each coin is positioned, he just spits them out, one by one. In the end, Stevie's success comes down to a rare anatomical condition combined with trickery, misdirection, and years of practice. Kind of like Bibastruja, the human battery, which I covered in my previous video. Now before you skip, this part's for you. If you've ever watched Penn Teller's Fool Us and thought, how did they do that? You're gonna love this. I have now uploaded over 70 member-only videos, totaling over 4 hours of content that covers many of the latest and greatest Fool Us tricks, along with special extra videos. If you want to support the channel and get access to these exclusive videos, you can join the exclusive access tier for just $14.99 per month. Each month, I upload 3 new exclusive videos, and all of them contain top-secret knowledge you won't find anywhere else. The man who doesn't bleed. Meet Arnold Garrett Henske, famously known as Mirian Dajo, the man who defied death itself. Mirian became widely known for his shocking performances, where he would have swords and other sharp objects pass through his body without showing any visible signs of pain or bleeding.
You are going to see a man have a 28-inch sword thrust through his body without hurting him. This is no fake, neither is it a miracle.
He would have long swords, even hollow rods, passing completely through his body, with water flowing through hollow rods, yet without visible bleeding, nor a wince of pain. Sounds impossible, right? But was this truly a superhuman miracle, or was it just another clever magic trick? Now, some of you might have seen illusions that look somewhat similar, like the classic needle-through-arm trick. Magicians usually pull this off by applying rubber cement on their skin and pinching it to fake the puncture. Or perhaps you've seen the terrifying bed of spikes illusion, where an assistant appears to be pierced through the stomach. In reality, this stunt relies on a clever mechanism. The central spike is hollow, with a retractable tip. The assistant wears a special harness that fits over this spike, creating the illusion of impalement when in fact she's completely safe. But Mirian Dajo's performances were no illusions. In 1947, his feats were put under the microscope, literally, at Zurich Cantonal Hospital in Switzerland. Dr. Hans Nageli and other doctors closely examined him using X-rays, confirmed that the swords were inserted through his body under medical observation. This was documented as a genuine medical case, not a stage illusion. Medical professionals observed that his body showed no major internal bleeding after the swords were removed. They even documented that his liver had been pierced with precise entry points and remained stable.
For it is clear that the sword does pass through the right lobe of the liver. There would be considerable bleeding, and Dajo must have been ill for several weeks after the operation.
This left everyone amazed and some terrified, prompting theories ranging from divine intervention to demonic possession. To understand how this extraordinary act was possible, let's quickly look at what happens when our skin gets injured. our bodies immediately kickstart a repair process divided into 3 stages. First up is the inflammatory phase. As soon as you're hurt, blood vessels constrict, platelets gather to form a clot, and white blood cells rush to clean up bacteria, preventing infection. Then comes the proliferative phase, starting a couple days later. Here, special cells called fibroblasts lay down collagen fibers, essentially patching up the wound. New blood vessels grow, and epithelial cells, the outer layer of your skin, migrate towards each other to close the wound, eventually forming a scab. Finally, there's the remodeling phase, which can go on for years, creating organized scar tissue. Crucially, this scar tissue is avascular, meaning it doesn't contain blood vessels, explaining why Mirian Dajo wouldn't bleed during his performances. Medical reports described visible scar tissue on Dajo's body from repeated demonstrations. These hardened pathways allowed objects to pass through the same area without major bleeding or pain signals.
Once the wounds had healed, a straight path of insensitive scar tissue would be formed. A sword thrust carefully along this path would cause little pain or bleeding because there are no nerves or blood vessels in scar tissue.
Now, although we do understand why Mirian Dajo didn't bleed during these shocking performances, but one question still remains. How on earth did he not feel any pain? After all, his skin is still getting impaled. Well, the key lies in those very same scars we just talked about. When your body forms scar tissue, it doesn't just block blood vessels. It can also block nerve endings. You see, nerves can regenerate, but scar tissue is dense and rigid, sometimes preventing nerves from fully reconnecting. When nerves can't reconnect, they become less sensitive or even completely numb. This means Dajo's repeated impalements effectively created numb channels in his body. The nerves that usually signal intense pain to the brain simply weren't firing, allowing him to calmly endure these seemingly unbearable feats. But let's dive deeper. Even with scar tissue creating these less sensitive paths, human tissue remains soft and vulnerable. A slight misalignment could cause severe injury or worse. A quick disclaimer, I'm leaving out some details on purpose because this is a dangerous stunt. The goal here is simply to explain the science and performance aspect behind what you're seeing, not to teach or encourage anyone to try it. So how did Dajo and later performers like David Blaine manage to consistently pass these sharp objects so perfectly through their bodies without error? This is where the remarkable stability of scar tissue comes into play. Scar tissue isn't flexible like normal skin. It's rigid and tough, almost creating a built-in protective tube within the body. This rigidity means once the sword is aligned correctly, the path stays stable, drastically reducing the risk of damaging surrounding organs or tissues. But make no mistake, the success of this act heavily depends on the steady hands and precise guidance of a trusted medical assistant. Even the slightest error in angle or force could have catastrophic consequences. Mirian Dajo wasn't alone in performing these shocking acts. Modern-day performers, notably David Blaine, have showcased similar feats. You might recall Blaine's viral video with comedian Ricky Gervais, where he calmly pushes a long needle straight through his arm, completely unfazed. In another demonstration, Blaine uses an ice pick, piercing clean through his hand from one side to the other. Now you might think, but he's a magician, it must be fake. Surprisingly, an X-ray confirmed the ice pick legitimately pierced through Blaine's hand. The explanation? Exactly the same as Mirian's. Repeated punctures create hardened scar tissue channels, blocking nerves and blood vessels, allowing Blaine to perform without pain or bleeding. Now there's one thing I want to highlight in David Blaine's case here. The part where something sharp goes through the bicep is actually a little different from when it goes through the hand.
Yeah. It does seem like a magic trick. Like,
it definitely doesn't seem like a magic trick to me.
But hold on, there's blood vessels and everything. How come there's no blood?
Well, it's a very small hole in comparison to.
It's a good size.
And there is blood on the other hole.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's because it's that you hit something.
In the bicep, the central portion of the muscle has fewer major nerves and large blood vessels compared to the hand, which is packed with sensitive structures. If it does make contact with a nerve, it would still be extremely uncomfortable.
Keep going. Wait. Uh-oh. Hold on. Woo.
What happened?
I hit a nerve. You
Oh,
gotta do
Jesus.
it in another spot.
No, no.
Hold
Come on, man.
You gotta do another spot. You were
Listen,
hitting a nerve.
Yeah,
My
but what if I
fucking
f your arm up,
crazy.
man, and then you can't hang from the balloon, and then YouTube's mad at me?
But most of the time it can avoid them entirely. Unlike hand demonstrations where Blaine relies on one fixed pathway that he uses repeatedly, with the bicep he can work with very specific regions of the muscle based on anatomical knowledge.
I would try to go like a straight path through.
Like right there.
No, I would go like lower and in, like just.
Like there?
I'd go.
Point
like
it.
that.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd go like that and keep. Hold on.
It's not painless, but because there's a lower concentration of large blood vessels in that part of the arm, it usually doesn't result in heavy bleeding the way some might expect. But here's the critical part. Just because it's real doesn't mean it's safe. Even with the scar tissue paths, the initial procedure is extremely dangerous. One slip or miscalculation can cause life-threatening injury. Never attempt anything like this under any circumstances. But what about those pinpoint punctures in Mirian Dajo's liver? Isn't injuring a vital organ normally fatal? Interestingly, the liver is one of the most resilient organs in the body. It can regenerate lost tissue even if up to 70% is damaged. That's why partial liver transplants are possible. In controlled medical settings such as biopsies, small injuries can heal naturally under professional supervision. Outside of a medical environment, this would be extremely dangerous. The liver is divided into multiple segments, each with its own blood supply. So, if the puncture is carefully guided into a low-risk area, the chance of hitting a large artery or vein drops dramatically. Medical literature supports this. Most minor liver injuries, such as those caused by stab wounds or biopsy needles, heal on their own. A 2020 trauma surgery review noted that over 80% of liver injuries seen in emergency rooms are low-grade and don't even require surgery, just rest and monitoring. Medical reports note that when a foreign object remains in place, it can sometimes temporarily limit bleeding, but this is extremely dangerous and can only be managed in a hospital setting. The real danger is removing it without control. So when Dajo had swords pass through the same scar tissue tract repeatedly,
This explains why the sword is always inserted in the same places and by the same man.
he likely avoided new trauma and bleeding altogether.
Those are the facts and a scientist's explanation. Meantime, Miriam Dajo eats and lives as an ordinary individual.
However, precise execution here is absolutely critical. The slightest mistake could cause serious internal bleeding or death. Adding another fascinating layer, medical professionals who studied Dajo suggested hypnosis played a major role. Dajo himself claimed mystical experiences during his years in India, leading many to believe Indian mystics had hypnotized him into believing he was invulnerable.
Years ago, Indian mystics showed Dajo how swords could be passed through their bodies without causing injury. They persuaded him to let them experiment.
Now, hypnosis has been scientifically shown to reduce or even eliminate pain perception. When someone is under hypnosis, the brain changes how it processes pain signals. In multiple fMRI studies, hypnotized individuals exposed to painful stimuli showed reduced activation in pain-processing regions of the brain. Essentially, the signal may reach the spinal cord, but the brain doesn't register it as pain. Hypnosis works through focused attention and suggestion. It's not sleep or mind control. It's a trance-like state where the subject becomes highly responsive to specific cues. Clinical hypnosis has been used in everything from dental surgery to childbirth to chronic pain management, sometimes replacing anesthesia entirely. There are even documented cases where patients underwent open surgery under hypnosis alone, remaining calm and reporting little to no pain. These aren't stage tricks, they're medically observed, peer-reviewed outcomes. In performance settings, hypnotists like Darren Brown use these same principles. Before the show, volunteers are screened for susceptibility to hypnosis. The ones who respond well are given pre-show hypnotic inductions. Then, during the live demonstration, Brown gives verbal cues to bring them into trance, pinching their skin or even pushing a needle through their skin without visible pain. The result looks dramatic, but it's rooted in real psychological mechanisms. In Dajo's case, reports from the 1940s suggest he may have been introduced to hypnosis by Indian mystics during his travels. It's possible that his initial impalement was done under a trance state, allowing him to endure the pain and form a scar tunnel through which future stunts could be repeated. Now, as astonishing as Mirian Dajo's feats were, they came with enormous risks, and sadly, Dajo paid the ultimate price. Surprisingly, his death wasn't directly due to his impalement stunts. Instead, it happened tragically after he swallowed a steel needle, convinced that his supposed invulnerability would protect him. The needle eventually caused a critical internal injury that led to his death. It was a stark reminder that pushing the boundaries of human resilience, no matter how extraordinary, can have devastating consequences.
That's all for today. Our tale of secrets ends here. Until we meet again.